Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Revolution. Today we are talking about, can MAGA erase Black history? And I'm here. My name is Eric, and I'm going to be the chair of this. And with me is Anita, Kay, and Dom. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Taryn, for producing today. Welcome to our weekly program on YouTube and other streaming platforms. And this is coming to you from the Communist Party USA, which is a 105-year-old institution fighting for working people's needs in the United States. Every Friday morning, we get together with a panel. And this week, as I said, we're talking about celebrating Black History Month and can MAGA erase Black history, but we're also celebrating the birthday today of Frederick Douglass, who is one of the premier foundations for the struggle for civil rights and against enslavement here in the United States. It is so important that we are doing this today on Frederick Douglass's birthday and celebrating the literally centuries of African American struggle for equality, freedom, and to end enslavement and exploitation in the United States and elsewhere. I want to start out by mentioning something that we can't really ignore, which is the recent Super Bowl that took place. And that Super Bowl was, in a large way, a celebration of African American history and a demand for African American equality. Um, I am really impressed with the idea that the NFL did not bow down to Trump's anti-DEI blitzkrieg, that Ladizi performed the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was also the anthem of my high school, which I'm very proud of. And Kendrick Lamar's performance was viewed. And I'm wondering, Dom, what you think about that. Was it important for Black history and for Black people to have that moment?
Yeah, I think this really couldn't have been a better, not only Super Bowl matchup for this particular Black History Month, but there couldn't have been a better halftime show performer for this particular Black History Month in 2025, just weeks after Trump's inauguration. Not only because I think that the narrative there at the Super Bowl matchup between the Eagles with Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position, who for the most part of his career faced a lot of scrutiny um, in terms of his ability to play the position. Well, clearly, he just beat the best. I mean, this team was going for a three-peat, which would have been the first time it had ever happened in NFL history. And Patrick Mahomes, of course, is a great quarterback, another Black quarterback who has reached a level that for a long time was unprecedented by Black quarterbacks. But in terms of Jalen Hurts, he faced a lot of media scrutiny. And in a similar way, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens faced a lot of media scrutiny for their ability to play quarterback and their talent. Well, clearly, Black quarterbacks can play the position and they can play it really, really well. And then the halftime performance with Kendrick Lamar, like I said, there couldn't have been a better choice for halftime show performance. He I think stuck to his values, at least in terms of what he puts out in his music, and didn't shy away from putting those values out there, even with Trump in attendance. And I don't know if anyone else saw the news, but Trump left like almost immediately after the halftime show. So clearly it didn't, with Kendrick Lamar, the message that Kendrick Lamar was putting out there in his halftime performance, which I think was a message just undeniably of pride and being a Black American. That didn't go over Trump's head. I think he heard it loud and clear, and I think he pissed him off, so he left.
Thank you. I think that's really true, and I think that that's part of the resistance to the MAGA onslaught that is arising from all sorts of directions in our country. Um, I want to go to Kay, if I could. And Kay, Google announced that Black History Month is no longer going to be highlighted by default in the Google Calendar. And my question for you as a young worker is, do you think it's important for corporations to engage in celebrating Black History Month, but also other uh, contributions by other peoples like indigenous history, Polynesian history, the different peoples that have contributed to the rich culture and the wealth of the United States. Um, is it important for that to be recognized? And what do you think about the, whether Black History Month and the contributions of Frederick Douglass are still important today?
Yeah, I think if we reverse the question at first, we get a really clear answer. So corporations are made of people, right? Most of these people are employed by the corporation, and they come from all walks of life, right? Even if you don't have any DEI initiatives, even if you don't have any black people or women working at your corporation, it's still the case that people are coming from different walks of life, and they come in contact with different people, and they know that these people exist, right? So if we consider what it would mean for a corporation to not be able to sell to any of these people, and let's ignore white as a category. Let's go back to the 1800s where you had the Irish and the Welsh and the French and the Italians. They're all coming to the United States as separate populations. Let's say you don't want to sell to any of those people. You know, where are you going to make your money, right? Um, it just it doesn't work out from a very bottom line perspective. And then if you also consider that people uh, are often contributing to society uh, in fundamental ways from all these different walks of life. You know, you have different perspectives. You're able to come up with different inventions, different ways of doing things, different ways of improving things. Um, it only makes sense for corporations to recognize Black history or women's history or the various histories of the peoples of Asia, um, of Africa, of Latin America. So I think it shows who is trying to bow down in front of Trump, the fastest, the hardest, and Black people, other oppressed peoples, notice this. Um, I just called my Congress people, my House representatives, and my senators to let them know that, hey, in my case, I saw that they were at least saying something and doing something, voting no on Trump's appointments and things like that, and to let them know that people are watching. You know, we're doing our part now, and we're happy that they're doing theirs. And if they stop doing their part, they're gonna feel it from us, and they're gonna feel it from Trump too, because he doesn't respect loyalty. Um, and I think when we look at the contributions historically of Black people specifically, thinking about can MAGA erase Black history, um, it has never been a worse time to try. We look at the history of Black people coming to the United States. Uh, they were stolen away from their land. Many of them died on the way here. They weren't allowed to read or write. They weren't allowed to use their names that they had back in Africa. They were treated brutally, the whole time. And yet, the musical tradition survived, the food tradition survived. They learned how to read and write and unearth their own history. I mean, we're having Black History Month right now because that process failed. So really, I wouldn't like to see them try to erase Black history, um, but I don't think they're going to succeed. All they can do, the best they can do, is to make it.
Thank you. Anita, in the in what both Dom and Kay were talking about, it's really moving to see different ways that Black people are finding to express their participation in our culture and in our society. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is, why is it that ruling classes tend to, or the ruling capitalist class today, and also conquerors and rulers in the past, why is it that so many peoples have seen their histories erased? Why is it that it's not just Black people in the United States, though that is absolutely horrible, and that's the focus of our discussion today, but it's also the Palestinian peoples, and it's the Mayans and the Aztecs and indigenous peoples in the across North and South America and Central America, and indigenous peoples in Africa. What is it that is going on with this mass erasure as part of a ruling class's domination? Thanks.
Well, thank you, Eric. That is like the key question. Why is the ruling class going after Black History Month and Black history in general? And of course, they have done this since the very beginning, when Carter Woodson was publishing out of, I guess, Chicago. Wherever his books were sold, his Black history books, was targeted by then the McCarthyite period of just horrendous oppression or repression of those kind of ideas. So I think the ruling class always is fighting to keep the racial hierarchy and the class hierarchy in place, and they use the mythologized version of the past, historical narratives that are not really very rooted in actual fact, they use them as weapons of social control over people, to diminish their power, to try to diminish their power. So I think we have a constant contest of historical narratives in this country, where sometimes during some periods, uh, working class history, that's the thing, Black history and all the histories of minority groups in this country, they are working class history. They're history of working people fighting against those racial hierarchies and class hierarchies. And that history has to be squashed by the ruling class in order to make their mythologized version of history dominant. And now they're making rules, they're making laws. Ohio just passed one, I think, a couple of days ago, to institute a version of history in all of the public colleges in Ohio that is really a whitewashed version of history. And it's part of a huge project of white supremacy or white nationalism, to really take steps to repress that history. But as Kay said, it's a futile task, because there will be pushback, and there always has been ever since Carter Woodson, and before, uh, back to Frederick Douglass. So there will always be a pushback against that ruling class effort to repress that history.
Thank you. So that you're raising some really interesting questions here, and I'd like to go back to Dom, if that's okay. The one of the things that Anita was raising was really uh, the existence of Black people in our country, the actual physical existence of us being here means that Black history is important. And I think that one of the things that we see when we look at at the way that Black people are integrated in with our society is that we see that we're everywhere, except except when you look at the billionaire class at the very top. There's I don't maybe there's one or two up there, if that many, but I don't even know if there's one, honestly. Um, so I think that when we look at the everyday life of Black people, sports, home, um, schools, when we look at that kind of and workplaces, when we look at everyday life of Black people, is the history of struggle, which is the history of Black people, is that important? And I just want to mention one other thing here because um, Anita mentioned Carter Woodson, and I have to say that Carter Woodson is attributed with starting the Black History Month in its current form, or as it turned into this current form. But I have to say that the Communist Party USA, started Black History Month classes in the 20s and 30s prior to this, and helped to set the foundation for Black History Month. But what do you think about? Oh, also, I'm sorry. One other thing I have to say because I think it's important. Um, there's a theme for Black History Month right now, which is um, African Americans and labor. So when you talk about sports players, you're talking about laborers. When you talk about nurses, you're talking about laborers. What do you think about the importance for people who work of Black History Month and acknowledging the contribution in the history of African Americans here?
Yeah, I think like in Black history within the context of the United States is the history of the United States itself. And that history is constantly being made, and we see it in real time. Just to tie it back to the NFL and football, Lamar records this year in terms of his performance at the quarterback position. Um, so you know, it's we the American history loses a part of itself when you eliminate Black history, especially in terms of in the context of the working class. That the history of resistance within the Black community is it's so important to the history of the resistance of the working class itself. It's, you know, when you consider the civil rights movement, and the labor movement, it's with workers and working class resistance to the ruling class, the capitalist class, within the labor movement. There's a ton of Black history in that as well, that oftentimes gets not overshadowed. That's not the right word, but maybe, and not brushed under the rug. That's not the right phrase, but not always looked at. And that aspect of of that history within the labor movement is not always highlighted. Um, and I think that the very reason why the ruling class is putting in so much effort to erase that history is because we know that there's no baby, regardless of their race, is born with hate in their heart or any sort of bias. um and 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 because of that, you know, when this, it makes so much sense, the history of resistance and why we're still resisting now, when you understand that history. And when that history is taken away, then that's when, you know, they can exploit the erasure of that history, when people aren't educated on the history itself. And that's why they work so hard to get rid of it, is because they know when people understand that history, it makes so much sense why we're resisting. We're continuing to resist today. And I think that's why the rollback of DEI just a couple years ago, when they were banning books like To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, and getting rid of key critical aspects of African American studies in colleges and in high schools. It's exactly why they don't want us to be united and unite around this culture and history of resistance within the working class, broadly speaking, across race, across nationality, across gender. They don't want us to understand that history and utilize that history to continue to resist today.
Thank you. That's very, very moving. Resistance is not futile. Resistance is the word of the day right now. And if we could go to Kay, Donald Trump, in his Black History Month statement, said, "As America prepares to enter a historical golden age, I want to extend my tremendous gratitude to Black Americans." And he specifically named, among others, he had four, but he specifically named Clarence Thomas as an exemplar of um, the Black experience. All this while he's destroying DEI, destroying programs that help uh, the African American people, as well as all the working people in this country. What do you think about this? Like, why this weird contradiction where he's feels forced to say something about Black History Month, but he's so against it and trying to destroy it at the same time? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is related to the critique people have of corporations, uh, kind of like half-heartedly putting up celebrations for Black History Month or for Pride Month or things like that, uh, because I think it matters to them that they appear to have some sort of popular support. Uh, I mean, it certainly matters to us because you go over to the right and they're constantly putting up these, one or two people that they can find from each cultural group or ethnic group or race or what have you, to say, oh yeah, we love Trump. It's so amazing. Um, but when you look at the reality of the situation, like Trump is thanking Black people for voting for him, there is no demographic of Black people that a majority of them voted for Trump. Um, and historically, that's never been the case ever since Black people could vote back in the 1800s. Um, and if they could vote before that, they still wouldn't vote for that type of character. And so we we have to think about what are they trying to do when they say, "Oh yeah, Clarence Thomas is great. We love Candace Owens, so on and so on." And then, meanwhile, most Black people don't want to, get within 10 feet of Trump unless, they're going to punch him or something. Uh, they want the appearance of popular support, even if they don't have it, which they don't. Um, Again, Trump lost the vote to people's couches. If you count the vote percentages, he got like 32% of the vote, and the non-vote was 37%. So it's really, I mean, I don't care whether he has to pay homage to Black History Month or corporations have to pay homage to Black History Month out of spite or out of a quest for power, because there's only uh, you can only go so far in trying to hide the truth. And the truth is that if you're going to appeal to American people of any stripe, you have to mention that Black people are on board, women are on board, Asian people are on board, uh, the indigenous people of the United States are on board. Um, that's just the fact. And the reason that the left is going to win is because we actually represent the people. The right can steal all the money that we have or try, um, but uh, they're not going to win by trying to fake it.
Thank you very much. They're not going to win. And we're going to do our best to organize everybody to make sure that MAGA is a short period in our social life here in the United States. Um, Hopefully, we can end them in terms of their control over both the House and the Senate in 2026. Thank you. Anita, let's go back to you. And one of the things that both Dom and Kay have been really talking about is how Black people exist in the United States, and how we're integrated in this society. So there is really no way to say that Black people, that our history is somehow separate or different or not integrated in with U.S. history. But from a worldview, is it, or not a worldview, but here in the United States, what we're trying to do is struggle to meet the needs of, to change the power structure to meet the needs of the vast number of working people. Why, in your view, do you think the struggle for African American equality is central to that? Why is it that it's so important that the theme this year is African Americans and labor, and that theme goes way back? I mean, that relationship goes way back. So, for instance, um, it was the relationship. Well, the relationship uh, between the Communist Party and the struggles around Black history are part of that relationship between Black history and labor struggles. And the uh, a great book is American Negro Slave Revolts, which talks about the history of revolts all through the slave period. So there was literally never a period where we weren't resisting. And I'm just wondering, and you'll be our last speaker for today, but what do you think about Black History Month from a perspective of the movement to resist Trump and resist the MAGA folks?
Thanks, Eric. That's an excellent question, and I really think it goes back to a theory that we have in sociology. We're always kind of jealous of the legal scholars who have their critical race theory, but we have our theories of racial formation, which look at the kind of back and forth from the ideas and the cultural side to the structural side, where people's real power is expressed, and the economic side. So I think what we're seeing is the struggle of the working class to assert itself, the ideas of, if as the as the working people gain power, their narratives of history are also going to gain prominence. So I think you see a battle of ideas in one realm, the cultural realm, but in the structural realm, you really see, for example, MAGA is not only trying to erase Black history, but they're also trying to, and they have a lot moved far into this. They're really trying to take all the power away from the National Labor Relations Board by firing a couple of its people, and so they can't make a quorum, they can't enforce any labor laws. So I think the structural things that MAGA forces are doing kind of reflects what they're doing in the history of ideas and the cultural arena of conflict over historical narratives. It goes back and forth and really reflects each other. So I think you did see more attention to Black history in the early, maybe in during the Obama administration, for example. You might have seen more, and that I study the Caribbean, and that happens in the Caribbean all the time. As Afro-Caribbean people became more powerful and exerting more control over their own societies, the African side of Caribbean history is told. So I think those things reflect each other and go back and forth. But I think it's just important for us to keep an eye both on the cultural side and fight for those narratives that really reflect the working people's struggle, and at the same time be really vigilant to try to protect the structural gains that the working class has made since the New Deal, or since 1863, say.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you so much to Kay, to Dom, to Anita. It's been a real pleasure. I want to say happy birthday again to Frederick Douglass. And I am so happy that it's Black History Month and that we are able to do this. Stay safe, stay strong, stay in the fight, and we will see you this time next week again for Good Morning Revolution. Thank you.